Hello friends, and welcome back to another day of kart racing at the Vancouver Island Motorsports Circuit. As you can see, it was a wet one this time, and a windy one actually. A number of pop-up tents lost their lives that day. This is the morning practice session, and the first thing you'll notice in a minute here is that the track is very different from last time. Instead of continuing up the hill after the straight here, we've got a braking zone right after the start-finish line, and then we're going to hang a hard right hairpin right here. Sorry for the in-kart audio quality, by the way. Since it's so wet, I can't run the cover I would normally run over the microphone, so things are a little bit noisier, but I'm sure you can manage. Right, so I had actually been hoping that it would be dry for this session, even though I do usually like the wet. I mean, not just for the session, but for the day. Because we'd actually had a practice day previously on this layout, and it was completely dry. And I'd actually been feeling pretty good. I changed some setup stuff on my kart, and I think it was about the best I've felt in the dry so far. But it's all pretty much irrelevant now because it's wet. Fortunately, I'm always pretty comfortable in the wet, so that probably bodes well for my chances today. And indeed, the outlap felt pretty good. I actually felt like I could push, had good grip, good balance of the kart. So things are going well, and I was getting a little bit more comfortable figuring out the braking zone for this hairpin. And by the way, it was awesome having an actual braking zone in this track. I actually really like this layout. So anyway, I'm feeling quite comfortable and starting to push harder, and then this happens. And then... oh! I really appreciate him taking the escape route over to the gravel there, because for a second there I thought he was going right into me. Here I'm just trying to get down to where I can actually see what's coming before I cut across the track. And now once it's clear, I will get going again. So got lucky there. The rest of the practice session was fairly uneventful, and once I built some courage back up, I was going pretty good again. So I was feeling ready for the qualifying session, which is next. The one fun challenge with this new setup was figuring out gearing, because the longest straight on the track has now been shortened significantly. So we certainly want to go shorter in the gears, but it was a little bit tricky figuring out how much since the conditions were changing constantly. As you can see, it's now actually a bit drier than it had been in the practice session, though still clearly wet conditions. I think I chose well though. Still though, qualifying got off to a bit of a rough start for me. There was an accidental red light that killed my first flying lap, and then the next one I had a big slide into the first corner. So basically, it's this lap or nothing. Okay, that was quite a bit cleaner. It seems like I'm gaining on the kart ahead, but I should have enough space here that I won't get held up. And apparently my rear camera did not enjoy how much of that curb I took. Fortunately survived, and I had Chris right behind me to help me locate it. Might be time for a new camera at this point though. The screen was already smashed by a rock a few races ago. But we'll have to do without for the rest of this one. Fortunately, I'm putting a half-decent lap together here. That kart didn't really hold me up any. And ultimately, I think this is going to be good enough for 6th place to start the pre-final. So, not fantastic, but it could have been a lot worse with only one attempt at it, so I will take it. Now, unfortunately, the technical difficulties didn't quite end there. Somehow I managed to not get a battery into my main GoPro for the beginning of the pre-final, so I missed the first lap there. But only the first lap, and I'll explain why in a second. While I explain that, let's cut to the only camera that was still recording footage at that point. Maybe you'll hear me go by. So basically what happened was I started in 6th, so the 3rd row on the outside was not looking forward to going around the outside for that first hairpin, but our row got a great launch, and we actually pulled ahead of the inside row a little bit. I was able to hang it right around the outside and actually gain a place in that corner, so I was up to 5th. Then completed the rest of the lap. Now, you'll recall earlier I said it was quite windy. As we came around to the final chicane, it turned out that the wind had actually blown one of those giant plastic barriers right across the track. So guys in front of me had to check up. I think somebody spun. They were all over the place. And the rest of us had to take to the pit entrance to escape. It was actually a little bit confusing because with all the chaos, I just saw the barrier, and that was, in my mind, the edge of the track. And then I'm driving around it, and I find myself in the pit lane, and it's like, well, how the hell did I end up here? What's going on? But anyway, the red flagged the race to set everything back up, and we all pulled into the pit lane, which was convenient because then I was able to realize that my camera didn't have a battery in it, wasn't recording. Of course, I wasn't able to get a battery for the GoPro right then, but fortunately I run so many different cameras that now we have helmet cam footage. So, some shit is gonna go down at the restart here. I guess I'll give you what I was thinking at the time first, and then afterward explain a little bit about what I figured out. To start with, I'm happy to be starting on the inside this time, hoping we can just stick to each other down this inside row and cut around the inside of the hairpin, and hopefully I end up in third out of there if all goes as well as possible. Spoiler alert, it's not going to. So Todd in front of me has left a bit of a gap here, probably to try and get a run at the start, but it doesn't quite work out. There's the green flag. I'm pushing him to try and close up here, and I'm getting pushed from behind, but whoa, where's he going? Oh no! God! Yeah. So that's about how that felt. I got lucky to only lose 2 places from that and not sustain any significant damage, though my drop-down bumper is dropped, so that's going to be a 5-second penalty at the end of the race, most likely. And unfortunately, Todd appears to have come out of it a little bit worse off than me. Now, my understanding from talking to him afterward is that he was closing up quite quickly on the first place cart in front of him, and essentially felt like I was going to push him right into there. Of course, that wasn't my plan. I was starting to brake just as he pulled over to the inside, but of course he didn't know what I was going to do. There's one of those places back. Right, so basically he pulled to the inside to take avoiding action, and as a result, since I was still right on his bumper, you know, he was unstable, wasn't able to make the corner, came around, and then we came together. So, yeah, I probably should have backed off a little bit earlier. I thought I was still giving plenty of room for him to brake and make the corner, but obviously he felt differently. Unfortunate racing incident, but fortunately we were both able to carry on. And speaking of, I'm carrying on pretty well so far. Made that one past last lap, and I'm pretty quickly closing up to the 2 carts in front of me here. We're still on wets, but the track has obviously dried significantly, so the grip has increased quite a bit. So, just head down at this point and try to finish closing that gap. The 2 of them are right together now, so we'll be bump drafting a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't make it more difficult. Maybe you caught my expletive there. I really thought he was going to go into the barrier. He must have had a centimeter clearance. Oh, he's going for it here. Oh, but going deep, and looks like that'll be a position for me, actually. But yeah, if somebody touches that blue barrier, the whole thing tends to whip around and collect whoever's right behind them, which is why I tried not to track all the way out that lap, but fortunately it didn't end up happening anyway. But yeah, so he went deep there, got me a place, and he's behind me, but a little bit of a gap right now, so hopefully he can close up and start pushing me along, and we can close back up to the guy ahead. Just taking a glance to see how far back he is there. I'm not sure whether he actually has the pace to catch me at this point, but I feel like I am gaining on the cart ahead, so I figure I'm just going to go for it. It's funny, I'm actually gaining a ton through here, which is where I was losing the most time earlier when it was wetter, so funny how those things can change so quickly. Helmet cam isn't quite as good as a GoPro at switching files, so just a couple seconds missed there. Anyway, definitely in his draft at this point. Should be able to finish. Oh, might even. No, should be able to finish closing up here. Now, I'm not going to go around right away because I'd like to close up with the cart in front as well. And like I said, I'm not sure if Chris behind me is going to be able to close the gap to me. So I could go by either here or at the end of this straight, but instead I'm just going to push him along for a bit. And hopefully the 2 of us together can get up to second place there. And once again, I got nervous about the barrier there. Cost me a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about sticking with him at this point. See, this part of the track is still pretty damp, and that being where the biggest braking zone is, it really is still kind of wet conditions, even though a lot of it's dry. You can also see from my visor there is still a fair bit of spray going around. Anyway, still sticking with him. I think we are getting a little bit closer to the cart in front, which I think is Kalis. Now, I think this lap is when I come around here, and yeah, I feel a bump from Chris behind, so I'm pretty sure if I pull out here, he's going to follow me, and we can hopefully both get an overtake done into this corner, and then stick together and catch up to the next guy. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the rear camera, so I'm not sure if he got by there as well. I don't think he did, but I believe he gets by down the straight here, or possibly into corner 1. Now, first place is probably out of reach because I think there's only a couple laps left, but I am getting closer to second here and starting to think that might be possible. Not entirely sure whether I'd like to start second in the final rather than third, but honestly, I'm not really thinking about that here. I just want every place I can get every race. Also, the fact that my bumpers drop down, I'm somewhat aware of, but again, it's not going to stop me from trying to get every place I can. And there is the white flag, so we may have to settle for third, except I gained a ton into there for some reason. Now, at the time, I was thinking maybe he has a mechanical issue or something. He's looking back a lot here like he's trying to defend. What I realized afterward is that he's actually being strategic here, was thinking the same thing I was a minute ago, that maybe he wants to start the final in third rather than second, so he doesn't make that too difficult. Now, what he might not have realized is that Chris was right on my bumper, so he let me through intentionally, and then the two of them are fighting it out. And I believe there was only a few hundred separating them crossing the line, so it almost backfired. But actually, ironically, if Chris had gone by as well, it would have been good for him in trying to get third place, because with my penalty, I end up in fifth, Kalis is second, and Chris is third. And there it is. So yeah, that was actually a really fun race. The beginning was a little bit unfortunate with that incident, but my pace was the best it's been in quite a while. So of course what that means is the conditions for the final are going to be completely different. I just like went right into him broadside. You recovered pretty good. You were right behind me there after that. Was I behind you? Yeah, it didn't slow me down a whole lot. Unfortunately, you're not quite as likely to have a drop down go unnoticed finishing second as a little bit lower in the order. But that's alright. Initially, I actually thought it was a DQ, so only losing 5 seconds dropping down to 5th place isn't bad at all. In fact, you know, knowing how this track starts, a 5th place might be even better than a 2nd place to start off with. Anyway, bit of a chaotic start to this one. I think it all started when Kalis pulled off because of a mechanical issue, and that kind of messed up the formation. So people weren't really in grid, or in formation for the rolling start the first time around. Didn't get the green, but everybody still thought we were racing, so we did a couple of laps here before all these yellows came out, and they're motioning at us to chill out for the real start. So while that happens, I can just tell you the weather really wouldn't make up its mind for this session. We were going back and forth between wets and slicks the whole time. It'd sprinkle and then clear, and the track would start drying really fast, and it'd sprinkle again. So upshot of that is it was really tough to know whether to go with a wet or dry setup, and we basically just had to compromise and be ready to throw whichever tires on. Turns out it was slicks, but I'm essentially still on my wet setup because I really didn't want to be on a dry setup on a wet track. I'd rather be on a wet setup on a dry track, although neither is ideal. But in the other situation, you basically just end up plowing into the corners and not able to turn, and that really sucks. As it is, my kart is always great in the wet because it turns in really easily, but it can be twitchy in the rear end, especially if I have it on a wet setup like I do now. So that's the challenge I've set for myself here. So you're going to see Kalis make his way back through up to second place in a second here. First or second place somewhere. There he is. I I think he got disqualified for all this, which is going to play a role later on. But for now, we're going to come around this corner, and we should be getting the green flag this time. And there we go. Okay, let's make it better than last time. See, I'm being a little bit more conservative. Oh, but he isn't going around the outside, and everybody got caught up in that, and somehow I've been promoted to second place. So, alright, I'll take that. Unfortunately, I've got quite a gap to first. I'd really love to close that up so that I can draft off of him and build a gap behind, but he is very quick, and like I said, I'm on less than ideal setup, so we will see what I can do. Definitely fighting the rear a little bit around there, but not too bad. Oh, right, and that was the other thing about not being sure what the conditions would be, is I am on way too short a gear for these conditions. You heard me top out like 2/3 of the way down the back straight there, so that's going to be fun. Fighting the rear again, but managed to get it settled to get on the throttle relatively early still, so not too bad. Doesn't look like I'm going to be closing that gap in front though, so I just got to do the best I can on my own, I guess. Getting around that corner okay, fighting the rear a little bit, but at least it's not completely snapping around. But then he really came out of the blue. Okay, he obviously had considerably more pace than me there. And now I'm on the limiter, so that's not going to help either. But I'm also making a significant mistake in here that I didn't realize until actually watching the footage and such afterward. I'm lifting for that double right-hander at roughly the same place that I was doing in the wet. Now, normally that would make some sense because in the dry you're coming in a lot faster, but you also have more grip, so the two cancel out, you end up lifting or braking at roughly the same spot. Like coming into corner one when it was totally wet versus now, my braking marker was very similar. However, since I'm on the limiter, I'm actually not coming in faster. I'm coming in at the same speed as when I was on the limiter and it was wetter. But since I'm lifting at the same spot, I'm just carrying way less speed through that corner than I could be given how much higher the grip is right now. So I'm definitely going to cost myself throughout the race with that mistake. But at least for now, I'm roughly keeping pace with Wesley in front of me here, and hopefully I can just keep that up, or ideally close up the gap some more. Instead, though, he appears to be pulling away through there, and I guess as a result, it's going to pull me down this straight, too. And I'm really starting to lose touch with him here. And fighting the rear still. Now, I hadn't realized until looking at the data how much that was costing me, actually. Since we're going relatively slow through there, even though I was fighting the rear, I was still relatively easy flat. But looking at the data, comparing it to the practice day that we had in the dry in the same layout, I was actually slower up those hills, even though I was in a much shorter gear, just because I'm scrubbing so much speed by scrubbing the rear of the cart around. Yeah, exactly like that. Now, I will partially blame the setup there, but I mean, it's not happening every corner, so it's clear that a driver with a bit more skill and consistency than this one could probably drive around it. But, doing my best here. Oh, I was also losing a bit by not cutting that curb more aggressively, but I was also trying not to murder my cart, so did already break off a camera on that one after all. Okay, so second place is probably out of reach here unless I can find some pace out of nowhere, but I am feeling relatively comfortable because looking back toward the end of this straight, I can't even see fourth place. However, very quickly, that changes. And just like that, a 5-second gap becomes less than 1. Now they clearly have pace on me at this point, and especially with the two of them working together, I'm not expecting to be able to keep them behind forever. All I really want to do is have them not fly by me so that I can try and insert myself into their train. So I'm going to try and defend on this straight, but actually I've got a yellow flag, so I don't have to worry about right now, except they're passing me anyway. So he's on the inside of me. I got to go around. Oh, and that messed me up and lost the rear too, so that scrubs off a bunch of speed. And just like that, they are gone. However, what I didn't know at the time is that they actually were both disqualified. Kalis already had been because of the stuff before the start, but I'm not sure if Rick got disqualified because of the passing under yellow or if it was something else. But anyway, ultimately that means I am still in 3rd place for now, even though I didn't realize it. I really would have liked to stuck to them though, rather than just have them blow by like that. Oh, they are fighting a little bit here. Maybe I can catch back up. If only I was carrying the amount of speed into the sequence that I should be. Maybe gained a tiny bit back there, but yeah, they have still gapped me, so see what we can do. We're getting a wiggle through there, not quite as bad as last time. Still not cutting that as aggressively as I probably should have been. Now, right about here, I felt a bump from behind, and I'm thinking, oh, great, okay, somebody's willing to work with me. Maybe we can close that gap back. Oh, okay. So that was Todd just biding his time for the right time to fly by me. And the timing was actually even better than I thought, because there's the white flag. So I'd really like to not give this position up, and at least I did manage to keep contact with him, unlike when the two of them flew by. So maybe I can make something happen here. Closing right up. Oh, I see that right there, I think, is when I noticed that I should have been cutting that more. So thank you for that demonstration. Not terrible through there, but he is definitely faster than me now. But he's defending on this corner, so if I can get a better run through here. Oh yeah. Oh, look at that. Okay, I'm gaining on him now. Gaining, and now I'm on the rev limiter and he's driving away. Oh, maybe one last chance out of here, but I'm thinking that this race is just about over. And that's it. So I survived the race. I ultimately ended up with a 4th place for the 2nd weekend in a row. You know, this was a super fun race day. I felt, oh, so that may have looked like a mistake. It actually wasn't. I forgot about this. Because of the switching from wets to slicks, I didn't realize until I was lining up that I had been just on weight before and had put in just enough fuel to account for that. And then my slick wheels are actually quite a bit lighter than the wets. So I was quite worried about being potentially underweight here. So I was, yeah, hoping I might be able to just pick up a little bit of dirt or marbles or whatever it might be and maybe get lucky. And it turned out that I was bang on the 360 target when we went in for the weighing here. So, you know, I did get a little bit of luck, even if that final largely didn't go my way. But yeah, as I was saying, super fun race day. Felt like a god in the pre-final. Would have loved to switch those two, but you know, what are you gonna do? Still think I learned quite a bit, and once again, the next race is only 2 weeks away, so really looking forward to that. Plus, if anybody was going to pass me for that last podium spot, I'm glad it was Todd, who I kind of took out at the beginning of the pre-final there. And I think that is it, so I will see you next time, hopefully from the podium. Until then. I almost took my phone out on track again. I put my code in the thing and was heading over toward the car and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, you've used up all of your marks.
Yeah. I think it has taught me to do a pocket check before I go out there though. So.
That phone's on borrowed time.
Yeah.